And I am in Minnesota, where I feel like I'm at the marquee series, even though that series could very well be over. It's tied 2-2. The Nuggets and the Timberwolves.
There's one guy on this call who got to go to the marquee series.
Is that some hateration and holleration? Is that what I'm sensing there, Jake?
No, it's okay. You deserve it. I'm having a good week.
Exactly.
Good to be here in Chicago.
You're in Chicago hobnobbing. Come on, man. Like, yes, I'm in Minneapolis. Timberwolves, Nuggets. The road team has won every game. I think yesterday was probably the most compelling game, 115-107. There was that, of course, 20-second stretch where the Nuggets literally scored 8 points, including the buzzer beater from Jamal Murray from like 50 feet. From afar, Jake, did it look like Anthony Edwards is like, oh, okay, I'm ready for this, but my teammates aren't? Because that's what it felt like inside the building.
On TV, it did, especially, I forget exactly at what point what his scoring total was, but if I remember correctly, at one point he had 43, and the TNT broadcast flashes, the little push-out box from the little square in the bottom right corner, and it said 43 on 16 of 24 shooting, which pretty hard to be more efficient than that, man. And we were talking about it before we went live. Like, it's such a silly little thing, but that clip of Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns slipping and sliding into each other, it kind of felt like a microcosm.
Looked like a cartoon, man. Looked like a cartoon.
Especially two big guys. I mean, I wrote about it on Saturday in Dallas, like almost as funny as Chet Holmgren chasing Derek Lively around the court with his arms outstretched. Just when two big guys do something goofy, the surface area for goofiness only grows. And it was to bring it to basketball, like we've said it on No Cap Room, I think it was pretty evident in all of our predictions that we wrote in our roundtables. Like, the champs are the champs for a reason. And Jamal Murray was not going to have as bad of a performance as he did in Game 2 continually. People already on Chicago, like, I only got here yesterday. The weekend's kind of been full of G League Elite Camp and stuff like that, but a lot of the league is here. I'd say there's been some whispers about maybe the league did the Nuggets a favor not suspending him, and like what kind of precedent that sets. Because like, if you're a referee now, players can just hurl objects at you and then they can pay their way out of it. That's an interesting precedent to set for all that type of stuff. But like, do you want a repeat of Amari Stoudemire not being able to play for the Phoenix Suns way back when? Do you want to take away like the true optimal form of what this postseason matchup should be? I don't necessarily fault the league for doing that. It's just a thing to note. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me about Minnesota not being like ready for the moment, to your point, was just that like Denver's taken punches before and overcome it. And that's one thing Minnesota hasn't. You go back to that Grizzlies series when they overcame the play-in tournament and Pat Bev was twirling his jersey on the stands and whatnot. Like, they were up 2-1, was it, on Memphis? Or they had a chance to go up 2-1, and they just never recovered, and their recovery was going out and trading for Rudy Gobert. Like, Denver's Michael Malone, said this, I believe, after Game 3. Like, going back to the bubble, Denver's come back from 3-1 multiple times. I just think that like resolve is something that the Nuggets have in their DNA. That maybe it's not even like a detriment to Minnesota. It's just they haven't been together long enough to have those types of experiences in their back pocket to lean on.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, I don't view the bubble in the same way. I view it as an accomplishment. But when I think about 3-1, I think about the travel back and forth. You know what I mean? Like, in the bubble, you were in the same place, the same environment. It doesn't take away from the accomplishment at all. It's just a completely different environment than the normal gate of the NBA playoffs. Yeah. But the one thing you did...
Real quick, just can I raise you? And I know I keep interrupting you on your show.
No, go ahead.
I'll just raise you then. They were up 2-0 on Phoenix last year, second round. They go back to Phoenix, lose 2 in a row, and then they just turn around and blow the doors off of the Suns and start this whole Monty Williams, what's happening in Phoenix. You know, the Nuggets are kind of as responsible for that as anybody. So
Well, it's crazy, and it's not even a counter to that, but that was just Phoenix hitting crazy shots for 2 games. And I think that Denver knew that wasn't sustainable. Denver, the one thing about Denver that everybody seems to say, Anthony Edwards has said it, Mike Conley has said it, Chris Finch has said it, they are not going to beat themselves. And that sounds like such a simple statement, but you have to actually go out there and beat them. And that's what Minnesota did in the first 2 games. I don't know if Denver was going to be beaten these last 2 games on the road. Like, they played with such a serious approach. They played with like a tightness. They played with a focus that Minnesota doesn't have the experience of going through yet. Like, we don't know if we can trust Karl Towns. Karl Towns had a miserable game, right? Miserable game. It was Mother's Day. We all know that he lost his mother, Jacqueline, in the early days of COVID in 2020. Like, really sad story. So you can understand that his focus, his mind could have been elsewhere. He struggled in the series to begin with, no matter what the circumstances were. So it's hard to contextualize game 4 within, the first 3 games or so. And I looked at Jamal Murray looking spry. I looked off the bench. I'm like, wait, Justin Holiday is contributing? Christian Brown is out there doing it, hitting open shots. Michael Porter Jr. didn't do a lot yesterday, but Aaron Gordon did. Aaron Gordon hit his first 11. And that's a guy that's sacrificed, even though I think he's in the perfect role, you know what I mean? And you wrote a really interesting story about the bromance between Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic.
Thank you.
And just the fact that he has embraced playing next to him and embraced that he can be the best version of himself, submerging himself into being the best complement for Nikola Jokic. I think that was, that takes a lot of awareness for a guy like that. For Minnesota, they don't have that guy yet that realizes that Anthony Edwards is the franchise. I need to make myself the best complement, the best thing for him, as opposed to the best thing for me. And I think that's where the Minnesota Timberwolves are. And I think Ant is a little ahead of schedule. I think the Timberwolves are not. I don't know if they expected to be this good this quick, but he's better than the team is, if that makes sense. He's further ahead at 22 years old than where the team is. And now you have to look at the Nickeil Alexander-Walkers and the Jaden McDaniels. Like, those were the guys who were really getting after it in the first 2 games. And those dudes disappeared at the crib. But that's what happens.
One thing on Justin Holiday. So when I was following the Nuggets for that story on AG and Jokic, that was like mid-March. And someone around the team said to me, like, I know we're grooming Peyton Watson to kind of play some postseason hero type spots like Christian Brown did a year ago for us, but the coaching staff likes Justin Holiday and be prepared for him to be involved. And I looked at the numbers and I remember when we put together a 7 under the radar X Factor players at the start of the playoffs, I put Justin Holiday in there because he was the 6th most efficient player on the team, and based off of Impredictable's overall like net rating numbers and box score plus minus stuff. And he's a career 40% 3-point shooter. He's super lanky. Like, I just kind of had a educated inkling that he was going to be called upon and could maybe deliver. And shout out to Justin Holiday. Like, definitely the most afterthought of the 3 Holiday brothers, being that both, and he's the oldest, both Drew and Aaron were first-round picks. Aaron's had a little bit less of a decorated career, more of a journeyman like Justin, but that guy's bounced around the league, man, and he has kind of slid into the Jeff Green spot of that rotation, even though Uncle Jeff was more of like a backup center for Denver throughout that playoff run. But Justin's the like veteran guy pushing 35 that is out there and is kind of playing for his last real shot of glory. So, and he's delivering. Shout out Justin Holiday.
Yeah, I've had Justin Holiday when he was a vet in Chicago, still, figuring out, like you said, in the journeyman status, but he was just a professional that everybody liked. And he would go in and he would play defense and he would hit shots. Those are elements that sort of fit well on any type of championship team.